to Totally Abstracted. I'm your host Michelle, and today we're discussing something that I think can completely transform how you approach your abstract landscapes: simplifying complexity, learning how to break down a scene into essential shapes to create stronger and more dynamic compositions. If you've ever looked at a landscape and felt overwhelmed by the sheer amount of detail, trees, buildings, shifting light, all those tiny elements, it's because nature is naturally complex. But in abstract landscape painting, we don't need to paint every leaf, every wave, or every blade of grass. Instead, our job is to capture the essence of a scene, the energy, the balance, the movement, by reducing it to its core shapes. And breaking the landscape into shapes can simplify your process and strengthen your work. Let's explore how. So one of the biggest challenges artists face is getting stuck in the details too early. Have you ever started a painting with a perfect sky, then found yourself struggling with what comes next? Or maybe you've tried to recreate a landscape faithfully, only to feel that the composition lacks impact. The solution is simplification. When we focus on big, bold shapes first, we build a solid foundation before getting lost in unnecessary detail. Think of it like this. When you glance at a landscape, your brain doesn't process every single object at once. Instead, you see large areas of light and dark, major colour groupings, and the general structure of the scene. That's what we want to capture in our paintings. By reducing a landscape to simple shapes, we create compositions that are more powerful, more intuitive, and more abstract without losing their essence. So when you look at a landscape, try to break it down into three main areas. The foreground, the nearest elements, which often anchor your composition: rocks, trees, waves, fields. The middle ground, the transition zone, adding depth and movement, maybe hills, pathways, a stretch of water. And the background, the distant elements that set the scene: horizons, skies, fading landforms. A simple way to train your eye is to squint at your reference. When you do this, details disappear and only the strongest shapes remain. Let's say you're painting a coastal landscape. Instead of seeing dozens of waves, you see one sweeping shape of water. Instead of every rock, you see a large triangular mass. And instead of clouds full of intricate swirls, you see big abstract patches of light and dark. This is the foundation of good abstraction, working from shapes, not details. Once you start seeing landscapes as shapes, you can use them to create more dynamic compositions. Here's a simple process to follow. Start with thumbnails. Before you start painting, sketch 3 to 5 small thumbnails. Use just 3 to 4 main shapes. No details yet. Experiment with placement. Where does the eye move? What feels balanced? And try flipping elements or exaggerating proportions to strengthen the design. Then try focusing on value. A great abstract landscape isn't just about colour. It's about light and dark contrasts. So shade your thumbnail in just 3 values: dark, mid-tone, light. This helps create depth and contrast before adding any colour. And then block in big shapes first. When you start your painting, focus on large, bold areas of colour rather than tiny brushstrokes. Use a palette knife, a catalyst wedge, or a brayer to apply broad, energetic strokes. And keep edges soft or sharp where needed to create movement and focus. By resisting the urge to dive into small details too soon, you let the painting breathe and develop naturally. When I paint, I almost never start with a small brush. Instead, I actually grab my soft pastels and start applying blocks of colour: sky, land, sea, without worrying about the finer details. Take my recent piece, Those Green and Golden Days. The key to making it work was first starting with soft pastel shapes, and in the first few layers, loosely applying expanses of green, blending into orange, punctuated by darker forms. This all created an early loose structure. If I'd started with little elements first, I would have lost that expressive looseness that makes the piece work. So if you take just one thing from today's episode, let it be this: think in shapes first and let the details emerge naturally. This week, try this exercise. Choose a landscape reference, squint at the landscape until you see only the biggest shapes. Sketch just 3 simple shapes: foreground, middle ground, background, and paint your scene using only those shapes first, then refine as needed. Bonus challenge, try limiting your palette to just 3 colours too. for an extra layer of simplicity. Breaking a scene down into simple shapes might feel like a small shift, but it's a game changer. It helps you stop overthinking, move more freely, and create compositions that feel stronger, bolder, and more intuitive. Thank you for joining me today on Totally Abstracted. I hope this episode gives you fresh ideas for your next painting session. Until next time, keep things bold, expressive, and above all, totally abstracted.